What's up, everybody? My name is Steven Sanchez, and today we're going to actually mess around with a little bit of detail work, a little bit of shading. But before we do that, check out the new duds. Oh. Alright, welcome back. Jumping straight into detail work. So how we're going to do this? Well, let's zoom in first. Touch upon shapes real quick, right? Because this is how you begin. Circle, square, triangle. Ooh, I'm really good at this. And if we have lighting, then a light source coming from, let's say, the top left is gonna garner you some shadows on that side. That's how you do the straight on shot with the shadows. Now, if you're gonna do a shadow work from down here as well with the oval shape or the circle shape, depending on where the light source is hitting, you're gonna go ahead and show where that light source is, where that shadow is gonna start hitting on the other side, right? So as you can see, it's kind of animated. So if it's coming from this side, then you know it's going to be on the adjacent side. Okay, same thing with the shadow here. That's the simplicities of it. Now let's get a little deeper into the good stuff, which is drawing muscles, right? Okay, so you got the easy stuff out of the way. We're going to go ahead and just start focusing on muscle work, right? But before we do that, we have to draw the shapes in order to know what's going to happen with the shadows and the detail work. So this is kind of a shot where the arm is coming straight at you, and then you can go ahead and erase all the unnecessary line work and focus on where lighting is going to be. So top right, we know where the lighting or the shadows are going to be on the adjacent side, and keeping it simple. I'm not drawing all the perfect muscles, keeping all the lines very simple there. So as you can see, all the shadow work is on that side, right? This is the rough breakdown of that. Once you understand this, it's going to be a lot more fun to get into the title work. But this is the stage you want to be in practicing. So if I'm illustrating the arm relaxed downward and the lighting is this way, and the closer the light is to the object, the more harsher it's going to become, okay? So for example, if you have a flashlight and you're putting it on the pencil, the closer it is, the harsher it's going to become, which means that the shadow on the other side is going to get harsher as well. The further, everything gets softer, okay? So by softer, it will become something like this. See that? So it softens out. The way you can try it is grab a flashlight and just grab an action figure, best thing to do, and put it together and see what comes out of it. Shadow-wise. See what comes out of it shadow-wise, because what's going to happen is you're going to start seeing how the light is bouncing off of all of that 3D look, and you'll have a lot more fun when you're messing with the light up, down, left, right. So you have fun with the 360-degree view of, let's say, the face of the toy and the arms, the legs, and whatever part of the toy that's going to be on there. So you'll be able to go ahead and go in a circular motion and see how the lighting affects the shapes. So there it is, nice and soft shadows or nice and dark shadows. And at this point, we'll just start touching upon detail work. So for the detail work, same thing. If the lighting is coming this way, and we're gonna go ahead and start focusing on our form. And I'll erase some of the stuff here just to keep things extremely simple. Once you have the form and know the lighting, then on the adjacent side, you have thicker line work, a little bit of the muscularity. And now we'll focus on some of the detail work. So in the 90s and a little earlier as well, the detail work you would somewhat feather in this fashion in order to kind of show the gradation of it, right? So now it's more stylized and technique. That's what it's used for, because you can color nowadays or you can shade it digitally. And I could do stuff like this and get away with that. But in this case, since we're gonna do a little bit of detail work, we can actually bring down the pencil to like maybe I wanna say that's like a number 5 as a mechanical pencil. And the same thing applies to cross hatching, where you start further and then get closer and then slightly turn the page and then do the same thing. And you don't have to do this. This isn't a prerequisite for learning comics or anything like that, or comic drawing, but it's just another way to focus on how you can shade things with lines in a linear fashion. That way you don't have to shade it with either with brush or with your finger, and you can just have a stylized look. That's technically the whole reason behind all that. So anytime you see anybody use this, or even me using it, it's just a stylized situation for the piece to look a little bit different for what you're looking for it to look like. So you can draw cartoony, right? So let's say, for example, this is your cartoon arm, and the big muscles, I'll give the character some armbands and a little bit of muscles. So there's a cartooniness of it. Now it's up to you how you're gonna wanna shade it. So if you wanna shade it where the light source is not in the middle, but rather on the sides, you can have two different light sources, light source 1, light source 2. You can actually make this nice and dark depending on how close that light is that we were talking about earlier, and you can start shading in that mid zone. And by leaving little gaps in the area, it creates interest to the other lines around the body. And all these shapes that I'm building right now is based off of the shapes that are already there. So if you're kind of confused as to, well, how do you know where to throw a specific line, and how do you know how to throw that line there? Is that correct? There's a chance that it's not correct, but it looks good, and that's the whole point. So you're utilizing your knowledge of the muscles that you've already learned for the forearm, and in your head you're saying, okay, well, the midsection is going to be shadowy, and any of these lines is going to have maybe a slight sliver of white in there, so you can go ahead and just throw a few of those lines together to make the shape, okay? Because once again, it's a circle. See that? Where the shadow's right here, dead center. Or it's gonna be over here, and you're already gonna know where the light source is. It's coming from that side. And the light source is coming from this side. See that? So what you're doing is you're utilizing the muscles by lengthening those muscles and seeing where the shadow is gonna end up being, and that's what gives you those white little slivers of lighting in order to kind of give it that 3D look. So that's it. Then I can add all this with shadow. And this is, once again, a very cartoonish way of doing it. I would recommend you going ahead in this route because you're not gonna exasperate your brain cells trying to figure out how to make it look cool. You're trying to understand the whole point of it, right? The workings of how lighting and shadows and detail work together, because that's the whole point, is to say, hey, this is the shadow work, this is the shadow work here, and I know there's going to be a little light source here because that's that little muscle right there, the little horse muscle that everybody has. And then you can say, okay, cool, now the detail work, I'm going to go like that. So you see how big I'm utilizing all my knowledge of the detail and the shadows? It's to show you the simplicity behind it. As you get better, you can then start tightening it up a bit more, and then you can start getting into really hardcore looks, tighter muscles, you know, like the guy has not eaten any carbohydrates for a good while. So you're gonna see every muscle striation, and we'll go ahead and draw a character with very tight muscles, and then we'll do a little bit of shadow tone, okay? So now, by adding technique, by adding pressure, we're starting to see how this is starting to turn out. So now it's starting to come together as a very comic book-esque mainstream kind of a look. And they used to do this a lot in the 90s, where they would cross these shadows right across the muscle, which was 100% wrong, but it looked cool. I wouldn't advise it. Keep with the lighting and the shapes. Your best bet, action figure, little flashlight, bar none. The best advice I can give you guys is have that handy, and that way you can always see where the lighting is gonna hit and how it's gonna change your artwork. And then at this point, if we're talking about full-on cross-hatching, then yeah, let's get in there. There's different styles of cross-hatching. You can just leave it like this. It keeps it simple. You get onto the next muscle, you move on. Remember, if you're getting paid by page in comics, the way how it works, then you want to be a little fast with it. So you don't want to spend all day doing tons of detail work unless you're getting paid really good money and you really want to show off. You'll probably want to do things like that little by little in order to increase yourself as an artist, because that's the type of work that's going to garner you way more cash flow in the end. But in the beginning, that's not what you're focusing on. So this is the detail work that you would put into it just to get all that nice soft shading coming up, right? And once again, this has to do with this, okay? So if you don't want to be doing this to your artwork, then you can just go with those nice soft lines, those feathered lines. So you see how tight that looks compared to the more toon version of it? Essentially the same thing. When you're practicing, focus on the toon version first. You're gonna have a lot more fun, I guarantee you. And once again, sign it, put the date on it. If you're doing digital, do the same thing. Sign it and date it, and then either print it out, leave it for your portfolio, or just save it on the cloud. Either way, I will guarantee if you do this for an hour every single day, in a month, you're gonna come back and look at how good you've gotten. So try that out and see how far this takes you. Hopefully this helps. I will see you guys in the next video. Be good and be safe. Bye.